And get started. We have quorum and everything, so we're good. There we go. All right, welcome everybody to the August 18th, 2021 Police and Fire Commission meeting. This is our normal meeting that we have every month. And we have a quorum. Tom O'Day is joining us via Zoom. So I'll call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes. So there are 4 separate minutes, one from July 26th, one from August 3rd, one from August 4th, and one from August 11th. So Sarah, thank you for putting all of those together. Has the commission had an opportunity to review them? And are there any questions or comments or concerns? No?
Rosa, could you repeat that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just said that I have reviewed some, but I didn't have a chance to review all of them. So I don't know if Sheena or Ron.
Do you want to just take a moment and take a look?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Rosa,
Okay.
does anybody, I'm just going to put that question out there again, does anybody have any concerns or thoughts on the meeting notes? They seemed complete to me.
I'll move to approve all of them as one, unless someone has an objection to that.
I
Nope.
just have one thing to add really quick here. It was brought to my attention this afternoon that on the August 11th minutes, it's not the council president that the complaint should be brought to, it's to the president or chair of the board. So I just have to make that correction in the August 11th minutes. That was part of Valerie's presentation to the commission about the PFC complaint and when does the actual charges or the filing date, when does it actually start?
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and I'm going to assume that that includes that one change, because that does seem like it's substantive and we should make it. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving all of the minutes, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Very
Aye.
good. Motion passed. Thank you. Next order of business, are there any public appearances for non-agenda items? I see head shaking, and I don't see anybody in the stands here, so we'll move on. Next up is report from the police department. Chief Leggett?
Thanks, everybody. I'm sure Sarah's going to get the report up for your viewing pleasure.
Yeah, Matt, if you want to just start talking, give me a second to bring it up.
Well, there's not much difference between last month and this month as far as the number of staff that are currently either at training or on restricted duty. We're hoping to get one of the probationary officers who had been off for an extended period of time back into field training in September, as well as one of the day shift officers back in early September as well. So that might assist somewhat with the staffing levels that we're currently facing. just with vacations during the summer, can stress the department from a staffing level perspective. But officers are definitely stepping up, and it's appreciated across all shifts. So I thank all the officers for sacrificing a lot of their time filling overtime shifts over the summer. I did have the opportunity to visit the 4 officers, 4 recruits currently at the Law Enforcement Academy yesterday up in Appleton. They seem ready to go. They seemed like they're getting the adequate training that they're needing up at Fox Valley. So we look to bring them on in field training on after October 8th when graduation is. Any other questions on staffing?
Chief, you mentioned the overtime requirements this summer with the people on leave and then the low number of staffing that we have in our police department. How often, I guess on average, are individual police officers called in for an overtime shift, if you have some metric for us?
So the last number that I overheard some sergeants and Lieutenant Hartwick's talking about who are required to fill in. And the odd thing about this summer, which is kind of unlike many other summers, is we had our 3rd and 4th quarter in services in July and also into August, which traditionally we do not schedule in service during July and August, but because of COVID, MATC would not allow us to utilize their facility for obvious reasons. And then also Dane County Sheriff's Office, which we typically utilize for their range. We had to battle some of the scheduling issues with them because of the fact that they ran an academy over the summer months. So that played into it as well. So, but that being said, over the last, I want to say over the last month or 2 months, there's been over 75 vacancies that needed to be filled. And those were a combination of either 4-hour or 1.5-hour overtime spots. And they'll probably run out through the rest of September, my guess. So odd type of year, but one of those things that if we had the 7 officers on staff, probably wouldn't be as significant. But as you know from previous meetings, Tom, I would love to have 5 to 10 more officers to assist with staffing.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right. Thanks.
Well, maybe just
go ahead.
comment. Sorry. And the issue of staffing numbers is something that might not be directly within the purview of the Police and Fire Commission, but it does have a significant effect on retention. And as we members of the Police and Fire Commission have been meeting with members of the police force, that's something I've heard often, is the number of times that they're called in to fill these overtime shifts, which are necessary to ensure the safety of the public, and the effect that has on officer wellness. And that, I think, is where it becomes a Police and Fire Commission issue, in addition to a common council and mayoral issue. That is the appropriate staffing of our police department. So that's why I asked these kinds of questions.
No, I appreciate your concern. I'm probably right there in the choir with you, that staffing is always a concern, but there is a balance to the staffing levels that we currently have. If we have more officers, then there's going to be probably more requests to have time off included in there, and you can't have one and the other. There has to strike a balance. But definitely, if we are able to maintain appropriate staffing levels in addition to adding additional officers, it's definitely going to help decrease the amount of vacancies that the police department is currently facing.
I'd like to chime in on Tom. I agree 100% with Tom's concern. Is there a way that we can track this? And maybe from what I've heard from the officers is the force backs are a lot. The force backs are what's detrimental to their well-being. Overtime, sometimes it's a choice, but the force backs, I think, are what's really taxing on the officers. Is there a way that we can track that, Sarah? That might be just something merely informational that we see monthly as to how many force backs were? Or is that overstepping our?
We have the, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, we do have the ability to track that through our scheduling software, Telestaff, on the number of order-ins or just purely the number of vacancies that we have on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis. And the problem, the unfortunate problem with Telestaff is it doesn't differentiate between if the vacancy was caused by the fact that we had low staffing or if it was a special event that we had to staff up for. So you have to take that into consideration as well, or if it was in-service based, or if it was a special, like a warrant service or some event that the department was taking on that we had to modify some shifts as well. So there's context that's needed behind some of the numbers that you would see in that report, but it would at least display the number of times officers were ordered in or filled a shift vacancy.
Hey, Matt, is it something you can easily add to the monthly report, the monthly staffing report?
I can certainly try to get an accurate depiction from our Telestaff experts in the police department, and we can definitely try to run a report to show those overtime codes and how frequently they're occurring.
I just have a comment.
Sure.
Just a word of caution when we talk about staffing levels. There's more that goes into that we know. It's not just this number of officers per 1,000-something residents. And I think you guys, the police department, is prepared to share information regarding the actual shift, the actual number of calls that an officer takes on a particular shift. So to see at that workload that they are experiencing and see if that's actually contributing to the use of overtime or not. So I know that that's information that will be coming forward at some point that we will be able to look at to make a complete analysis of the staffing issue within the department.
Well, and one thought on that, Wilson, I would love to see that data too, but a more example-based. The house next to us was burgled about a week or a week and a half ago, and I stopped and talked to the officer who had responded, and I've heard before, but he confirmed that there are only 4 patrol officers for the entire city of Fitchburg at any given shift. And Chief Leahy, correct me if that's wrong. Now I know there are sergeants and there may be lieutenants and other command staff as well.
So Tom, just to provide some context, our shift minimums are 4. So that doesn't mean on a given day there are only 4. There could be up to 7 or 8 on potential days when vacancies, vacation requests, special events, sick outs, those types of things. But our lowest number of officers that we allow for staffing is currently 4. We would love to get it up to 5, but that would also require more overtime and probably less ability for officers to be able to be granted off for vacation. Right now, contractually, there are a maximum of 4 officers guaranteed to have off on a given day. We are able to grant 5th and subsequent requests for time off, but that also requires there to be at least 5 officers working for that entire length of that request. So that officer was probably right that there were only 4 officers working, but there are several shifts where there are more than 4 officers working. Typically, the summer months, the staffing levels are a lot lower than it is in, the first part of November, because people want to take time off. They want to go on vacations. They want to spend time with families. And I completely recognize that and I appreciate that. So, and there are sergeants working as well.
All right, thank you, everybody. And thanks for the staffing reports. Next order of business is authorization to start new police officer recruitment.
So we have a need to start another eligible list. So we are looking at a tentative recruitment timeline here in front of you for September. So we would look to actually post a vacancy September 15th through October 10th. We would go through the redaction of names on the applications and the review of the applications on the week of October 11th. And then hope to have panel interviews the week of October 25th. Chief interviews early November, backgrounds November 8th, and then ultimately bringing to the commission a recommendation for hire, hopefully multiple hires for November 17th, with a target of the academy in January. Matt, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Other than the fact that I'm hoping that we can really highlight our lateral officer position or lateral transfer opportunities for those with experience. So we wouldn't have to, we'd be able to have the opportunity to bring those officers in, depending on how many were approved by the Common Council during the budget cycle. We'd be able to bring those officers in right away, starting January 1. And they could begin their field training process instead of waiting for the officers, the recruits, to complete the academy, which is always, there's always the potential that they will not fulfill those conditions at the academy. They might not pass firearms or not pass a phase test. So they very well could fail out of the academy, which would extend our need for officers even further. But that's one of the things that I really want to make a push for in this hiring process, is to really highlight those lateral transfer opportunities.
And the reason for the list, I guess, is it for to fill the town of Madison positions, and or what, I guess, other reasons?
So, yeah, so sorry, Sarah. So this hiring process would be essentially run based off the assumption that the department is going to be approved for the staffing requests that we currently have in our operating budget for next year. And if we're only allowed 1, we're only going to hire 1. If we're allowed 4, we're going to hire 4. And unfortunately, if we get none, we'll just have to run the hiring process and then create an eligibility list for any potential additional vacancies that we would have coming up.
So question, how many officers are you requesting in the budget?
So currently we are requesting a total of 4 department personnel for next year. So we would need to hire, if we got all 4 positions, whether they be a combination of officers and supervisory positions, we would still need to hire 4 new officers.
Have we offered the lateral option before? Is this the first year we're doing that?
No, we've had the lateral option for the last probably 3 to 4 years, maybe 3 years, I would say. 2 years? Okay. And we do have, we have hired officers under that lateral transfer position as well. So, and they seem, and they're, all the officers from the lateral position, they're very successful. And I think we've gotten a really good selection from that lateral transfer. that they can bring experience from other jurisdictions, other parts of the country that they've been exposed to, and I think it's a positive experience for everybody.
Great, thank you. I do actually have one more question. After talking with some officers, their concerns about them going laterally to other departments. How does this correlate with other, I could say maybe competing departments that maybe we would typically lose people to? I mean, I've heard Madison, I've heard Middleton, I've heard Sun Prairie. Are they going through a higher process? Are we going to lose anybody in that possible lateral change that they're offering?
So I'm not sure how many other departments in Dane County are offering a lateral position. I believe Madison just opened up a lateral hiring process. I'm not sure if any officers from Fitchburg have put their name in the hat, or how many from the surrounding areas. I believe that academy begins in October, which is kind of correlates with this whole town of Madison hiring process, which they I believe hired some out of that mix. But as far as the other smaller jurisdictions, I'm not sure how many of those jurisdictions currently have a lateral hiring process available. Sarah might know from her extensive research from an HR perspective.
I couldn't tell you I do know lateral language is pretty, it's newer. It's not something that's been around for a really long time. So like, as you see, Fitchburg was kind of leading the way a little bit. Madison just got lateral language in. So typically when we post, we'll have an entry-level job posting and then a lateral job posting. And we try to do a good job of advertising both to, the particular audience.
And Sarah, when you say you just got it in, you mean you just got the lateral option in through the collective bargaining agreement with the police union?
Yep, exactly. Yep, it was just implemented in the last contract.
And is experience credit for those coming from another police department provided at a year-to-year ratio?
It all depends. I know that they can come in as high as step 3 on the salary schedule, and even with additional sick time as well. So that's the big thing. You have officers here that accrue a lot of sick time, and then if they're going to go over to, first say Madison, they're going to potentially lose all of their sick time with us. I don't know if Madison will match that or not, but for example, we might give someone 40 hours of sick time, but we're not going to credit them, 1,000 hours of sick time. So that's the thing that you can lose when you do a lateral transfer.
And do you know offhand what that step 3 of the collective bargaining wage table is? Is it like 5 years roughly?
That's a good question.
Step 3, I believe, is 3 years.
Yeah, it's just 3 years.
So does that mean if an individual with 10 years, for instance, from the Madison Police Department wants to come to Fitchburg, they can only get 3 years of credit for those 10 years of work that they've put in Madison?
We would only bring them in at step 3. That's the highest that Fitchburg would bring them in at.
But Tom, just for some clarification, there are only, and Sarah, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, there are only currently 4 steps, I believe, or 5.
There's 5 steps. It's
5
after
steps.
1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, and after 10 years. So we would already be bringing them in at the after 3 year step, and they would only see an increase then after the 1 year, and then again at the 10 years with us.
So traditionally, a 4-year officer, in the past, prior to this contract, a 4-year officer was making the exact same amount as a 25-year officer. There's no additional steps beyond that for experience, or we have some level of longevity, but that's not for new hires anyway. So.
I like this process. I think it's going to benefit us as a city well, since we hopefully will have the chief police announced, and I hope that entices people to also apply. And I think that still gives a good window. Hopefully, if we announce the position in the middle of September, that still gives people opportunity to still apply, and I like that.
Does somebody want to make a motion? In regards to the list, opening a new recruitment list for a police officer?
Develop an eligibility list following the time frame discussed earlier.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of opening the recruitment list, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good, and thank you. Next order of business is moving into closed session. Can somebody take us into closed session, please?
Okay. Pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent C of the Wisconsin statutes, the commission will move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to discuss the performance of a specific police officer.
Do I have a second to move into closed session?
Second.
All in favor of moving into closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And closed session. All right, welcome back into open session, everybody. Next item on the agenda is the report from the fire department.
There we go. So call volume, it's been ebbing and flowing. It's been up a little bit over the course of the summer. Gives you an idea of what we're running on, and the fact that obviously activity in the city is up, so it correlates to increased call volumes. In addition to that, trying to get as many inspections in as possible to be able to account for open businesses, and not exactly sure which way COVID's going to go. Obviously, we see the mask mandates that have come out, so we're trying to do what we can when we can get in and do the safety inspections, so that if in the event that we have further restrictions, we're not hampered by that. We need to conduct those inspections at least once, mostly twice a year, and that allows us to get our 2% dues back from the state, which offsets our budget. On the second page, just an overview of staff, and much like you had heard from the police department, is the fact that we are taking a close look at how we are impacted by staffing levels. And the thing that hits us the hardest right now is the paid on call, paid on premises. We've been seeing our recruitment numbers going down over the course of time, and a lot of that just has to do with the state of the workforce. In Fitchburg, you can imagine, depending on the neighborhood, obviously, but in a good number of our neighborhoods, we have larger homes, and the folks that live in those homes have a tendency of working late hours. So it's not uncommon for somebody to work 10, 12 hours a day. The last thing they really want to do is come home and go into the fire department and put in another 14. The other thing is, in our lower income neighborhoods, although we're doing significant outreach in those areas, a lot of families in those neighborhoods have multiple jobs. So now putting the fire department on top of an already busy workload is stressing at best. What we are trying to do in that regard is to address the younger citizens that are looking for career options and trying to get in front of those things so that we can give them educational opportunities and potentially a career with a living wage. Because in the future, and we're seeing this a lot with our volunteer departments are having a real tough time with recruitment. Sooner or later, the fire service is going to have to address the way that departments are staffed. And more full-time employees and those types of things. Now, if we're going to do that, we need to be preparing right now for our 5 and 10 year, because there's no way without a referendum that we would be able to come forward and say we need 6 to 10 people, not with a levy limit. So we're trying to actively address the overall issues associated with public safety staffing, understanding that there's other things that go on in the city at the same time. We're working through development, which has a tendency of having a certain number of tax deferrals and tax incentives until they've been established. So at that point, you're really not able to fund a department based on the business that's coming into the city, not until they've established themselves and the tax incentives have matured. So I mean, it's big picture stuff. I think you guys need to know about it because of the fact that we are a growing municipality. We know that with the addition of the town of Madison and the development that's happening, especially on our east side, we're going to be a 40,000 plus municipality in the not too distant future. And that's going to require us to take a look at a number of different things, to include the creativity in which we provide service. We have multiple departments that provide similar services, and maybe we can address those types of things as well through efficiencies. So, and I think you guys alluded to this earlier, there's only so much you can do as a police and fire commission, but as I bring these things forward, you have a better idea of why there might be a sense of urgency and why we might be seeing some of our firefighters' retention numbers go down. I have one positive thing to say about our membership, although negative for us. One of our interns turned paid on premises firefighter, Tanner Hansen, got a job with Watertown. So he's a success story. He put in over 3 years with the City of Fitchburg Fire Department. He got his paramedic license, all of his certifications, and his associate degree, and he's where he needs to be. He's exactly the type of kid that I want to put in front of other kids in our municipality to say, this is what you can do, and this is how you can get there. I've said this to the commission before, and I know we've got some new members, but one of my biggest recruitment tools is the fact that I lose people, because we're steering them in the right direction and giving them a skill set that will sustain a lifestyle that has a living wage. And as far as recruitment goes, we're trying to get out into the community as best we can, where we can, bike parades, community events on King James Way. The peer support team is working with our existing employees to have events at the fire station, police station, and just, be that constant, gentle presence that allows them to reach out, especially if they're having difficulties with anything. It could be responses that they've gone to, or some things that are happening at home that really just need an open ear. So that's the long and short of the staffing report. That's all I got on that.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions? No? All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next up on the agenda is report from Human Resources.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. One of our agenda items is to actually identify the specific date and time for the PFC interviews with the 2 finalists. I talked to Fact TV, and they can accommodate the last week in August, essentially the first week in September. So August 30th at 5 p.m. would be a date and time. It's a Monday. So I don't know if you want to hold these PFC interviews with the 2 finalists after hours, during, regular business hours. So really, I leave it to the commission to let me know what your availability is. But Monday, August 30th at 5 p.m. would work for Fact TV.
We will have the background checks back by then?
Yeah, I guess that's the,
Yes? Great.
Yeah, that would be the goal, is we'll have it by the end of the month. That's a good point. That might be right up. You might not get a whole lot of time to review those backgrounds. Otherwise, we could look at another day that week.
I have another question. Are these going to be in person or Zoom?
Yep, so it's up to the commission. Zoom would be great, especially for Vic, who's out in Utah, to avoid him having to travel for a 3rd time to the city. So if Zoom is a possibility, that would be wonderful. And we can definitely accommodate that from a technology standpoint at the city.
We had talked earlier about the potential for paying for Vic to travel to Fitchburg. Is there room in
Yep,
the budget for that?
Yeah, we can make that happen. We will make that happen. If the commission wants him to be here in person, we can pay for his lodging and travel.
So do they know that that's a possibility, or does he know, and then he's willing to come in person?
Yep. I did say Zoom might be a possibility, but they both are, will make whatever work that they need to meet with the commission for one last time.
Do you have a sense there of their availability for that week of August 30th?
Nope, not yet. I let them know it would probably be around that time period, and both of them didn't mention anything on their calendar. The sooner we can let them know, the better, though, for sure, so they can set aside that time.
I'm okay with the Zoom. I think as a second interview, I'm okay with the Zoom if we want to take a vote, or just so then we can at least decide if it's going to be Zoom or in person, and then we can decide on a date.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it because you lose some stuff, in the communication, the nonverbal stuff, but I would prefer in person, to be honest with you. But
I'm with you. I would prefer it as well, but I will support the Zoom.
Yeah, I agree with Rosa and Sheena. I'd prefer in person. And I don't think cost should be a prohibitive reason not to bring the candidates back. It's an important enough decision where we should be able to spend that amount.
I tend to agree with this. I think that in person is always better, outside of safety. So I think that you do get a lot of nonverbal cues, and you see a lot of interaction that you don't necessarily catch. So I guess, I don't know, it sounds like we have consensus. Ron, we didn't hear from you. Would you have a preference?
Actually, I prefer the Zoom.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I think we've already interviewed them. We watched their body language, and we were able to look into their eyes and see their souls. Both of them are from out of town, and I think I think it's okay for us to use the technology.
Okay. I guess there is the possibility of limited travel. I mean, I guess, we don't know exactly where we're going to be when that
With the
comes.
COVID.
I don't think that we should necessarily not do it because of that, but I think that is a consideration. So I guess I appreciate that, Ron. I do think if it is possible, we should bring them in. I don't know if this is something that we need to vote on. Because, I guess, it's technically not even the item that we're talking about here. But I guess I would like to see in person, if possible, depending upon, the Delta variant and how that plays out.
What was that last part?
Depending upon the Delta variant and how it plays out.
And that's why I would just support the Zoom choice right now, just because there's too much up in the air right now. And we're fully functioning via Zoom right now. And truth be told, we weren't even going to have this final interview. So I think, meeting in the middle, maybe a Zoom. So I don't know if we do vote, because I agree. I 100% say yes, in person is great and wonderful, and I would prefer that. But considering, I fully support Zoom in this incident.
in this room or the smaller room?
It can be in either room, so we can accommodate either. And you could all be on the Zoom, so you don't necessarily all have to be, in the room physically at City Hall. So if you wanted to all be, if Delta gets worse, by the end of the month, that's always an option. So that's the nice thing about Zoom. If we are requiring Vic to get travel arrangements and making flight, getting all of that, he could, if Delta gets really bad where we don't want him traveling, now we have an issue where he's already, paid for some things for travel. So, yeah.
Well,
I we've said a couple times, we can disagree as commissioners respectfully, and I think this may be one area where we may just have to disagree, because I think in person's important enough for this important decision that, that it would like to make in-person work. And we saw some of the I think we saw some of the value in meeting in person with these candidates a couple weeks ago, and I think we would value seeing them in person again.
I tend to agree with that. So does somebody want to make a motion to have, does somebody want to make a motion, I guess? Because I do think that we do have a little bit of a disagreement here, so we should put this up to vote.
To have the,
To vote,
In
whether
person?
Zoom or in person?
yeah. So I move that we have the second interview of the two candidates for the position of police chief in Fitchburg to be in person.
And is there a
Second.
second? There's a second? All in favor of having both candidates come and interview in person? Raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, 3 take it. Thank you, everybody.
Do you know?
The rookies get ousted.
All right.
That's all right.
So the second item, though, and really the primary one, was a date. So we have talked about on the 15th actually making a determination. So that week of the 30th would give us a full week in between if we wanted to either A, meet again to have a longer conversation. The 15th meeting is actually our normal meeting, so we'll have other items to discuss. I'm sensitive to people's time, and I'm not necessarily saying we want to have tons of meetings, but at the same time, if we have it the week of the, on the week of the 30th, and we need to get together post that, which I think we probably should, we could do it immediately after that as one option, I would say, and probably one that I would prefer, just because there's an immediacy to that. We're fresh, we're talking, right after we talk to them, or we could have a meeting subsequent in between. But I guess I would propose that we choose a date that everybody can make, and then we have a post, sort of, those correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, those interviews will be held in closed session, and then the conversation post would also just be in that same closed session?
Exactly, yep,
Okay.
closed session for both
Just
of those items.
procedurally, just want to make sure we're clear on what we're doing here. Yep.
I have a question now that you bring that up, because here's, can accommodate a public meeting in closed session. You're talking about our meeting in closed session, is it?
Yeah, so
we
just, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, I was going to say, we have to start every meeting whenever there's a quorum with an open session. So when we meet to interview the two candidates, we'll have to start the meeting in open session, but then we'll
Okay.
immediately
Go into se-
We did the first time.
Got it.
Yeah, we did that with the first round of interviews.
Got it, yes,
So,
okay.
Just making sure
Question
we have
then,
procedurally,
because
yes.
the background checks have not started yet, I'm assuming.
They have started, yes.
When?
Just this week, actually, the detective has already reached out to both candidates and has received all of the necessary background information, all the paperwork. So the detective just started reaching out. So like today in our closed session, we'll actually talk about the additional items that we want the detective to look into. But he has started the preliminary, the beginning of the investigation for both.
Okay, and he's, okay, today's the 15th, so he's saying he needs just 1 week?
No, today, so with the 18th, we would be looking for by the end of this month. So he's got basically, if we're looking for the 30th, yeah, then we wouldn't be giving him the full, 2 weeks really. So we might want to push our meeting so he at least has 2 full weeks to do the background. So
I guess-
maybe
I
Wednesday,
prefer the 6th.
I was thinking Wednesday the 1st.
yeah.
I think that also gives Vic the opportunity to ask for time off because he's, that gives a
Yeah.
2-week notice, and I just think of that. And he has a career there that he's, trying to
When is
survive
Labor
by
Day?
too, so.
Labor Day.
2
Labor Day
weeks.
is the 6th.
Labor Day's the following week.
The 6th?
Yep.
Labor Day?
Labor Day is the 6th.
So I guess I would just propose, and we can have discussion, September 1st Do you have something?
Yeah, I just want to propose something before you go into closed session. If I could provide my announcements, take that out of order. I'll let you guys finish your discussion right now, but before you go into closed session, so that I don't necessarily have to be here for that
Yep.
conversation, and I can just depart.
I'm happy to do that. We
Yeah.
can move that agenda item.
Thank you.
So September 1st at 5 o'clock, if it's a normal sort of time, as Rosa rolls her eyes.
Is Fact TV available that day?
Yeah,
It looks like the conference room is, or the council chambers is available, and I would have to confirm with Fact TV, which maybe Chad, if he's listening, could double check their calendar. I don't have access to see.
I would very much like it in this room at all possible, because I do like the idea of the candidates being up on that large screen. That's just my preference.
If there's air conditioning.
Yeah, if, good
That adds
point, if
another
there's air
element.
conditioning.
December
Is
1st.
that a date and time, though, that does work, Rosa? I wasn't trying to be insensitive.
No,
Is
no, no,
that-
I
can
know.
make
Well,
it.
I prefer the 7th.
Just for more time for the background check?
Do you think, I mean, and
Well, we get the background checks, and then we have time to review it. And there's some holidays in between that we could use.
The other thing, I don't know, we're not beholden to make a decision on September 15th. And I don't know, the
Right.
city announcements that say we will make a decision on that date seem to me a little presumptive. So I don't think we should be beholden to any dates that we need to make a decision. I think we should make an informed and conscious decision. So I'd agree to spend a little more time with the background checks and allow the background check process to play out. So I
Yeah.
like moving toward that September 7th or
Yeah.
8th.
yeah, I tend to agree with that, actually, now that we talked that through, not just because of the background checks and when they would finish, but it would give us time with those background checks prior to those interviews.
Yes.
So.
Is our
after
regular
we-
meeting
Yep.
September 15th?
No, we're talking about, I believe, September 7th.
7th.
But is our regular meeting next month September
Or-
15th? The third?
Yep, regular
Yes.
meeting September 15th.
Right.
Okay. So we need to squeeze in a meeting for, to converse about the background checks, us first, I think, and then maybe schedule the interviews after that, because we need to, we're gonna have to compile all of our questions that we have. Does that have to be formal? I'd hate to bring them in and us not have time to review the background and ask our questions
Actually,
as a board.
It's a good-
So
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we're in,
I think we're jumping ahead to the interview when we need to really evaluate the background.
Yep.
And so, background conversation, interview, and if the stars align, then maybe we announce at the, but if we do the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th,
so I guess, how about this? Sarah, you think that, we think, and obviously tentative, right? We've used that word a lot along the course of this process. But you think that the last week in August, the week of the 30th, the background checks probably will be back, right?
They should be back by then.
Okay.
Yep.
And if that's true, and we receive them that week, right? We would have time to assess that information. But I tend to agree that we should get together as a group and talk about that. Because that does, weigh heavily into, or potentially weigh heavily into questions that we would ask, any considerations that we would have. So I would propose that we have a meeting definitely before the interviews to get together and discuss the outcomes of those background checks and to finalize any questions. Does that make
So?
sense to everybody?
The 7th and the 8th, the meetings with them?
So Jeff, you were proposing Wednesday, September 1st, to actually convene and look at the background reports, and then have an interview either the 7th or 8th with the 2 finalists. And then potentially a decision to be made on the 15th. Is that right?
That is what I was proposing, yes. If people think that's too rushed, yeah.
Okay, I would like time to go through those background checks by myself before the meeting here
Sure,
with
absolutely.
everybody. So I don't want to come.
Do we want to talk?
Go
Do we
ahead.
want to talk to the background check person as well?
I think there might be value in having a narrative or discussion with whoever does the background check as well.
Okay,
That's a thought.
yeah.
Right. Right, these are all very valid and,
Yeah, so is that an option?
That might be, I would have to check with the investigator. I'm sure that wouldn't be an issue. If that were the case, what if he could come on 8:30 on that Monday, and then that would give you 2 days to review the reports, think about what he had shared, and then on Wednesday the 1st, the group can convene and talk about the questions to ask at the 7th or 8th interviews.
And as long as we're talking details and talking the process, I do think for discussing things with the detective that's doing the background checks, Zoom is okay for that person to participate in with us, just for convenience sense.
yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
I would like Tom to give more info as to what he would ask that investigator. What kind of things are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think just clarification I expect about the reports. Obviously, not having the reports, I wouldn't know what it would be, but more just clarification of what he's seeing and hearing or she is hearing and seeing.
Which we need the reports back. We need time for us individually to go through those reports. And then we want to clarify anything of those reports before the interview. And so that's 3 things we need to do before the interview with the candidates. You still think that September 1st should be when we get the background checks reports?
No, so go ahead. You want to walk us through it, at least what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so I think the first step is we need to confirm when this investigator believes he will be done. I think at this point, if we start setting dates, we don't know exactly when he's going to be done with it.
Right.
We were hoping for end of August, but what if that isn't the case? So I'm wondering if we should hold on setting these dates, at least about the background and even, I guess, the interview at this point until we have a better idea. I might know as soon as tomorrow. He might he might be able to say, yep, I'll have these backgrounds done by, 8:29. And then I can inform the commission, and then we can, maybe I can work with Jeff on scheduling all of these necessary meetings. I guess what we have to figure out is how many times does the commission want to meet, and what do we want to meet about? We talked about having the background investigator actually come to the meeting, but then you wanted time to review the reports ahead of time. So once we can figure out first when the investigator will be done, we'll have a better idea of how to move forward.
I appreciate that, Sarah, I do. And I just want to be clear though, so if that's the process we're going to take, and I think that's probably wisest, I just want to make sure that we do nail that stuff down as a commission, so I know exactly what the parameters I'm working with are when I'm working on the dates. So I think that we get the date from Sarah in regards to when the investigator is going to be done. Once we know that, we want at least 2 days, is that fair? For ourselves to assess those reports. Is that, Tom, are you shaking your head? Do you think that's sufficient?
I do.
Okay. And as long as everybody's good with 2 days, then from the date that they provide that, we want 2 days before we actually get together and meet to discuss the background checks and the questions. And then as soon as after that, I guess, that we can, make a determination in regards to the actual interview date, which is going to be held in person. Does that sound right? All right.
Okay.
And to Tom's point, I do think that we are not beholden to the 15th. This has been a tentative process, and that word has been throughout the 4 months almost now that we've been involved in this. And we want to make a good decision based on all the information that we can acquire. So.
I second that.
Sarah, thank you for bringing that up as well as
Yeah.
the timeline and us not changing it to change it again. So thank you. That's,
Yeah.
I think we want to make as minimal changes as possible just to keep your email
Okay.
less.
Do that.
All right. So I don't think that we have any official items to approve on that one. The next order of business is moving into closed session. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot all about that. I apologize for that. So announcements.
Yeah, thank you for taking that out of order. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of and remind those that already know. This is our 50th year for the Fitchburg Fire Department. Organized in 1971, actually started responding in 1971. They hired the first chief in 1970, but started responding in 1971, and here we are today. 50 years later. We do intend on doing something at the fire station. We're hoping to do it either late September, early October. Obviously, COVID has impacted our ability to bring in family, friends, and community to celebrate exactly that. We also are trying to acknowledge the good work of our firefighters through awards and recognition. And we haven't even had a pinning ceremony for badges, which is typically a high point in just about anyone's career when they become a firefighter, to have their family or friends pin their badge on them for the first time. So we're hoping to do all of that. I just want you to keep your eyes and ears open, and I'll make sure that I keep you posted. We had hoped to already have done this in our anniversary year, and we hope we don't have to wait until next year to ceremoniously celebrate 50, but we'll do what we have to. And that's what I got there. And Fire Prevention Week, we're looking at a couple of different models for that as well. Because of the fact, and those that read through the research that happened with my study, my research through school knows that not all of our neighborhoods are accessible. We're looking at taking the show on the road and bringing it to the neighborhoods as best we can. Once again, we'll do what we must with public health and controlling the spread of a Delta variant, but we also recognize the value of not necessarily doing everything in our fire station and bringing what we do to the neighborhoods that don't necessarily have the transportation means. So if you have any ideas or suggestions in that regard, I'd be happy to take them, but I just wanted to keep you posted with those events.
So congratulations to you, congratulations to the fire department and the city of Fitchburg. That's pretty great, 50 years. It is something we should celebrate. And I guess just as a suggestion, I think that at least in my neighborhood, and I know that I have some friends in different neighborhoods, when they do parades through the streets, in the evenings in particular, it's very well received.
I
think it's a great announcement of all the equipment, all the efforts, and the fire department at large.
I do think if there's one thing that came out of the community parades and the bicycle parades that we do every year during 4th of July, I think Fitchburg really wants a parade. We just have no means of getting there just yet, and not necessarily a downtown street that makes that convenient. But we will continue to reach out in those ways because I do believe that exposure is not only genuine, but it does solicit the interest that brings hopefully more people into our fire station to ask more questions.
Yep. All right, thank you very much.
Just one comment.
Yes.
At that event, depending on how you have it, it might be good to have one of our members say a few words on behalf of the commission.
Oh, absolutely, and I'd welcome that. Anybody who wants to speak at those events is more than welcome to do it. We obviously try to involve the mayor as much as possible, maybe the council president. It sort of depends on how long we want to make it, but I try to live by one philosophy in those settings, and that's be brief, be cordial, be seated. And I do think that there's value to see those that contribute to our overall effort, and that includes the work that's being done here. So thank you for that.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
And then I just want to say thank you. You do come in our neighborhood for the 4th of July parade on Branson, and it's the shortest parade probably in Fitchburg, but our community, we love it, and we're very grateful for that. So I think going to the neighborhoods is a fantastic idea. I'm excited to see how that rolls out.
I'm sorry for belaboring this, but you brought it up. And,
Yeah.
I do like to talk. One of the things that I love about working in a suburban environment is the fact that the services that are provided, public safety, police, fire, EMS, we really do have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in our communities. And doing these small things, although not small to some and really not a tremendous amount of effort, we become ambassadors of our community. And it's just one more thing that Fitchburg can do because of the size that we are. And that's one of the things that I value most about the work that we do in the city of Fitchburg.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. Next item of business is to go into closed section. So for the record, we moved from item number 6, the report for human resources. We moved down to item number 7 after we covered subsection A to identify and specify the time for the second interviews, just to take care of the announcements. Now we're moving back up to sub-item B for 6, and that is to move into closed session.
To section 19.85(1) of the Wisconsin statutes, the commission will move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to determine the interview questions and specific background questions to ask during the second PFC interviews with the 2 finalists in a competitive recruitment process.
And do we have a second? All in favor of moving into closed session, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Closed session. And welcome back to open session. So we jumped ahead to the announcement section so that the fire chief could make an announcement quick about the 50th year anniversary of the Fitchburg Fire Department. But I would just like to give other folks an opportunity to have one last chance to make announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the PFC survey results are out on the PFC page. I just wanted to share the trends are out there. So what I mean by trends is how they, with the personal characteristics that they desired and achieve, the leadership qualities, and the core values. So those 3 are shared on the PFC page. There's been a question about the comments and whether the comments that were submitted as part of the survey can be released. When we had the city administrator survey completed in the personnel committee, we actually did go through the survey and the results. So the question is whether we would allow the personnel committee to view the comments or should I be putting the comments out there with the survey? I wasn't quite sure where, I thought we were just putting the 3 questions out there. So just looking for some guidance from the commission.
Who's asking if they can see the comments?
Yeah, so some of the elders are asking for the comments.
I thought we decided that we would write something saying that if they wanted to see the whole more detail, that they would have access to that.
That was my recollection as well, as an overall commission. So I think that we should probably just add that to I think we should add that to the website, or people can just be known that if they have questions, you can inform them of that. I do think there was the question of redacting some names, not information, obviously, not intent and of the message and all that. But I just would caution the city to be careful about that aspect of it.
Is there any worry with this as far as releasing this, and we didn't notify those who filled out the survey that we would be releasing this?
Did we ask for the names?
What's that?
We didn't ask for the names.
But in the comments section, there were specific comments related to specific employees shared. So
Okay.
That was the concern, is can we redact some of the names that are on the survey?
And if I remember right, I think we said it would be an open record standard that's used. So to the extent that an alder or any member of the public wants to make a request for the comments, they can do so, follow public records rules about redactions and what information you share and don't share, and that's shared with people.
Yep.
Would that open records allow them to see names, or are we able to?
There's the balancing test, so I'll work with our city attorney. It's possible that we might be able to redact some of the names if there's some sensitive information shared. So I can definitely work with our city attorney and just make sure we're operating within the open records laws.
Right.
Yep.
I think that's important if we're going to continue surveying the citizens and employees, that we do want to, because we did not tell them that this is going to be handed over to the alders or the citizen or the community. So I would worry that we would violate some level of trust with that. So whatever we can do to keep it as anonymous and the names out.
Well, I guess two things. One is the names, the people that actually made the comments are anonymous. So like that was not included in any part of this, nor should it be, and I completely agree. That said, there were specifically, the names that we're referring to are within the actual comments themselves, and we just don't want those people's rights to be violated, right? So, or whatever the open records laws states.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. That's it.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Anything else, guys, in announcements? No. Okay. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor of adjournment, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much,
Aye.
everybody.